everyone, and welcome to the Calm, Clear Mind podcast. This podcast is a place for conversations on how we can all keep a calm, clear mind in a hectic and at times a chaotic world, and discover our potential to live with deeper inner peace and happiness in everyday life. We'll explore how meditation and Buddha's timeless advice can help everyone, Buddhist or non-Buddhist, work through the challenges we meet in daily life with greater clarity, ease, and compassion, and in a way that's easy to understand and apply to our daily lives. My name is Barry Walsh. I'm a member of the team at Kadampa Meditation Centre in Dublin. Alongside me is the resident teacher or principal teacher of Tara KMC, Kadam Adam. He has been teaching meditation and Buddhism internationally within the Kadampa Buddhist tradition for over 20 years, having studied under the internationally renowned Buddhist meditation master, Venerable Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche. So what's the format of these podcasts? Well, we've been gathering questions from the attendees at our meditation centre in Dublin for some time now, centred around real-world issues we all face in everyday life, and how meditation and this timeless wisdom can offer real solutions to the challenges that we meet. Today, we will be looking at practical advice for those new to meditation and those who want to improve their meditation practice, and also exploring some strategies for overcoming anxiety and anger. So, without further ado, let's get started. Kadam Adam, how are you feeling about this, our very first podcast today?
Hi Barry, really nice to be with you and really nice to be with everybody on the podcast today. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great that we're able to put this in place, hopefully over the long term, for people to provide really very practical solutions to the real world challenges we all face. And it is a challenging world at the moment. So the idea of the podcast really is to tap into this timeless wisdom that Buddha shared over 2,600 years ago, and that people have been relying upon ever since to deal with the challenges they face in the world and the challenges they face in their life. And also to learn, for everyone who's new or people who have experience of meditation, how to continually deepen the practice of meditation and how that becomes a method to truly develop a deep sense of inner peace, happiness, resilience to deal with everything in life. So I'm really looking forward to exploring this with you over the coming episodes and continuing to evolve it over time. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, hopefully, for people to take away something really practical and useful for their daily lives.
Brilliant. So let's get started. Yeah, so we've gathered these questions, as I've said, and we're going to look at meditation in particular this episode, and we're also going to have a look at how this timeless wisdom can help us overcome anxiety and anger. So on the meditation, first question that we have is, many people love the idea of meditation and the promise of a deeper peace of mind and happiness that it can bring to their lives. Right? However, for all too many, at the beginning, it can seem like hard work. And even for those who've been meditating for years, their practice can lack consistency, energy and joy at times. Have you any thoughts on how we can improve this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think, it's one of those questions that, we all kind of address. So when you're brand new to meditation, it comes up immediately. Like, I love the idea of meditation, and I see these pictures of these really calm, relaxed, peaceful meditators, but it doesn't feel like me, and it doesn't feel like somebody I can become over time. Or maybe for people who do meditate, they're meditating for some years and they just notice at points they dip in their sense of energy for meditation or their consistency with respect to their meditation practice, or even they just feel it's like a bit of a chore after a while. So there are many various different ways we can look at that and begin to address that. But at the beginning, I think it's important at the start of this podcast as well is to address the main issue for many people at the beginning. It's not your innate inability to meditate. Everybody has the potential within them to become a truly qualified meditator over time, and everyone has the capacity within them that can be cultivated over time to really deepen and deeply enjoy their meditation practice. One of the reasons people either find it hard to get started or to maintain it when they do get started, or they find it hard to maintain that consistency and joy over a long period of time, is very simply the why for meditation isn't clear enough to us or compelling enough for us. So it's important that if you're going to start a meditation journey, you're going to integrate some meditation practice into your everyday life, even if it's just 10 or 20 minutes at the beginning. If you're going to integrate some meditation practice into your daily life, it's not about just sitting down to meditate immediately. It's about taking a little bit of time to reflect and contemplate on what is my why? Why am I sitting to meditate? Not why should I sit to meditate? So we need to be clear for why we're sitting, but it also needs to be importantly compelling for us. We really feel that that's something we want to do, not something we should do or we have to do or somebody's telling us to do. Just something we feel in our heart. I want to really do that. So what I would suggest maybe at the beginning for people, and even those again who are meditating and like that consistency and energy, is really spend some time with this question: why am I sitting to meditate? So let's give some ideas that people can work with and maybe they can try themselves. But again, it's got to be a personal exploration. It's got to be a personal discovery for yourself. But firstly, let's understand the why and why we would sit to meditate. So first we need to understand the purpose of meditation. And the purpose of meditation is simply to develop and maintain an increasingly calm, clear and peaceful mind, and the natural feelings of happiness and well-being that arise from that experience. And what's important when we think about meditation is that purpose is basically we begin to understand it's not just maintaining this calm, clear, peaceful mind and the happiness and well-being that come from that in the meditation session, but gradually being able to maintain that throughout your day, throughout your life, no matter what's happening in your day and life.
Yeah.
So what we discover in meditation is as we sit to meditate, and it's not easy at the beginning, of course it's not, I'm not going to say for a second it is for most people, because we live in this hyper-distracted culture, and we also live in this world where we have a lot of difficulties and challenges in our own life, and we see a lot of difficulties and challenges in the world. However, if we take the time and patience with ourselves to sit and meditate, we start to develop that calm, clear, peaceful mind and those natural feelings of happiness and well-being. What you discover is the more you sit to meditate and learn to meditate, the more peaceful your mind becomes, the naturally happier you feel. And that's why it's so important to think about maybe integrating some meditation into your life, because everybody just simply wants to be happy. Now, when we say be happy, I don't mean fleeting moments of pleasure that come and go so quickly. I mean, everybody just wants to be happy consistently. If I gave you the option, be happy or be miserable, which one would you pick? Everybody deep in their hearts just simply wants to be happy. Buddha said everybody has two basic wishes: to be happy and to be free from suffering. And what I'd encourage people on the podcast is to check in with that yourself. Is that true for you? Because you'll find that everything you do and everything you're striving for is simply to get to a place where you're consistently happy and free from suffering. Meditation is a training that enables you to develop that deep sense of inner peace and freedom from suffering over time, and increasing peace and happiness from time to time that becomes gradually consistent over time. So when we understand the purpose of meditation, that's our starting point. We're clear on that, and then we contemplate it in our hearts so it feels compelling to us, because everybody just wants to be happy. And so meditation is a method for training in and developing and maintaining a very deep inner peace and happiness. So I would say that's the starting point for everyone. If you're thinking about you want to sit and meditate, contemplate that for a while. Secondly, what I'd say to everyone is be really clear what meditation is. And because often people think they're not enjoying their meditation practice because they're engaged in some practice that's not delivering inner peace or happiness through their practice. And often they're engaged in a practice that maybe isn't really meditation, they just think it is, or I don't know. So some people say focusing on a candle is meditation, when it isn't really. It's just a training and focusing the mind a little bit. So we'll be clear what meditation is. Meditation is an inner training where we turn fully inwards and we focus on something with the mind. We focus on something that we can prove through our own direct experience is giving rise to an increasing sense of inner peace, inner calm, and the natural feelings of happiness and well-being that arise from that. So in meditation, we learn to turn our focus and attention fully inward. So it's not a physical action. You're not turning out to anything. You're turning your attention in and focusing the mind on something that you can prove through your own direct and consistent experience is giving rise to an increasing sense of inner calm and peace of mind and the natural feelings of happiness and well-being that arise from that. So at the beginning, often we encourage people when you're starting your meditation practice to start with a simple meditation like focusing on the breath. So in the meditation, the breathing meditation that we train within the Kadampa Buddhist lineage, it's a very simple but very profoundly encouraging meditation over time. You focus on the breath and you relax and let go, focusing on anything else, which of course at the beginning seems absolutely impossible, because when we turn our attention in and we try to focus on the breath as it enters and leaves through the nostrils, that's what we're trying to do. What we're doing is gradually just moving our attention away from everything else we're focusing on, the thoughts, the distractions, turbulent emotions. So as you move your attention closer and closer to the breath, what happens is you begin to settle the mind begins to calm, and then you start to access this natural feeling of inner peace and happiness and well-being within the mind. So at the beginning, doing a simple breathing meditation is an evidence-based approach to proving to yourself the purpose of meditation is to develop and maintain a calm, clear, peaceful mind and a natural feeling of happiness that arises from that.
Yeah.
So in that initial experience, it's a beautiful way of just beginning to settle the mind a bit and gain this temporary peace and happiness that comes from that. However, that's not where meditation ends. Meditation practice, then you begin to evolve your practice over time and you start to focus on virtues such as love, compassion and wisdom that help you develop this very deep inner peace and happiness, not just in the meditation session, but living from that love, that compassion, that wisdom more and more in daily life. So you move from, or you graduate from, focusing on the breath and the temporary peace that comes from settling the mind to this deeper, more consistent, more stable peace and happiness that comes from basically transforming the mind, transforming how you view yourself, others, and the world around you, so that you look at life from this lens of, or this experience of, increasing love, compassion, and wisdom. And when you're looking at the world from that perspective, or living from that place in your heart, your mind is naturally peaceful, naturally positive, naturally resilient, naturally flexible, naturally happy. So what you're doing in that particular development within your meditation practice is you're becoming deeply familiar in your heart with the internal causes of deep peace and happiness, which are these virtues such as love, compassion, wisdom, and so forth.
Right.
And so wherever we start, we can start wherever we like. We can start with the breath and begin to evolve over time. But even when you start with the breathing meditation, when you're engaged in that breathing meditation, try and develop this wisdom insight that's understanding what that's revealing. So you can be engaged in quite deep meditation just with the breathing meditation, but just contemplating what that experience is revealing when you sit to meditate. So you're focusing on the breath, you're letting go of everything else. And as you start to focus more and more on the breath, what you notice is the mind is beginning to settle. Turbulent thoughts, emotions, distractions, they're like waves arising out of the ocean of your mind. And if you do nothing about them, they just keep waving, which is what we often feel when we sit to meditate. There's just this turbulence in the mind. But what you learn through meditation is the more you gradually settle the mind through focusing on the breath and not the disturbing thoughts, feelings, or distractions. As you begin to settle the mind, you begin to access this natural experience of peace and happiness that comes from that. Basically, what you're discovering is there is a natural peace, a natural source of peace and happiness within everyone's mind that just arises naturally when you let go of focusing on what's bothering your mind. So if you discover that within your meditation practice, then what happens over time is you start to realize, I can access a peaceful, happy mind by just focusing on my breath. You start to develop this wisdom insight that's beginning to discover, at least a little bit at the beginning, the essential nature of my mind is peace. And from that peace comes natural happiness. I have this source of peace and happiness within me that I can access when I start my day or when I come back from a long day at work and so forth. But also you start to discover within that your potential for deeper peace and happiness. If I can experience a little bit of peace and happiness in meditation, I can continually cultivate that potential within me and start to find its deeper peace and happiness. And we'll look at that more in these podcasts, but you start to develop this wisdom insight I have the potential to become someone who's far more at peace, far more happy, far more flexible, far more resilient than I thought at the beginning. Now I'm beginning to discover this wisdom inside. I have this incredible potential, and my meditation practice is the vehicle through which I cultivate that potential on a daily basis and live from that potential more and more in my day in life. And then, as I say, that simple breathing meditation can reveal this deep and profound wisdom insight over time. I have the potential for far deeper peace and happiness than I previously thought possible. And then, of course, as you begin to progress, like I was saying earlier on, then you start to train in these other meditations, becoming deeply familiar with these internal causes of peace and happiness, these virtues such as love, compassion, and wisdom. And then now you're beginning to really evolve your practice and awaken that potential more and more. And you start to discover these qualities such as love and compassion and wisdom. They're not alien to us. We all have the potential for them within us.
Yeah.
And meditation and actually training in Buddha's teachings, the Dharma, also help you to continually cultivate and awaken those potentials. So, back to your original question. If you're lacking energy as a beginner to sit and meditate, or you're finding it discouraging when you first sit, just remind yourself, what is my why for sitting to meditate? And if at some level you feel that resonate in your heart, that actually through meditation I can find this deeper peace and happiness. Through meditation I can discover this natural source of peace and happiness within me that I can tap into whenever I like. And through meditation I can continually cultivate that. Then our motivation, our energy to sit and meditate is really natural. It's more like flow. You're not pushing yourself to sit in your meditation chair or cushion in the morning. You're very happy to sit because your why is so clear to you. I know what I'm trying to accomplish here. And it's compelling for you because you know that's what I want. I want deeper peace. I want deeper happiness. I don't want to suffer so much, which basically is what everybody wants anyway. And this ancient method of meditation is so relevant to our modern challenges and our modern daily lifestyles. It's just integrating that more and more into your heart and then beginning to see from there, actually I can accomplish the peace and happiness I long for. And for those people who maybe for a while now they're struggling with getting consistency, go back to that reflection. What's your why? Is your why still there? Over time your why becomes bigger. It's not just for me and my peace and happiness. You start to live from that peaceful mind and good heart of love and compassion and wisdom. And you understand everyone I love and everyone I'm learning to love through these trainings is struggling just as much as me. And so the more I learn to really improve my own mind and improve these qualities of my heart, the more my wish for happiness extends to others. I want the people I love and the people I'm learning to love to find that happiness within themselves. So your why is now becoming far bigger. It's not just for me, it's for everyone I love who I can see is struggling today. So I'd say start there at least. Be clear what meditation is. Contemplate the benefits gently in your heart regularly until you start to feel that why become powerful for you. It's that why that will move you to your meditation cushion or seat. It's that why that will keep you engaged with that process of change and just deeply enjoying your meditation practice over time.
Wonderful, wonderful. If I can't find that why when I look, for whatever reason, maybe it's just not clear. I know in general that this is going to be good for me. Other people tell me, etc., etc. Does that mean I can't start, or do I have to wait till I find that why, or how do I approach it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. That I think I would suggest that we can start whenever we like, and the why will become more compelling to us the more we start, the more we just engage. So we can think about it for a long time and never really get around to doing it. Or we can do it and just sit and meditate. Like you might even want to just do, 10 minutes of meditation each day. Just get up and do a little bit of simple breathing meditation. Again, maybe at the end of that meditation, noticing that peace and happiness there and recognizing that potential you have within that experience to develop a deeper peace and happiness. Because your experience of sitting to meditate will inform your why quite naturally.
Right.
Yeah, you can sit down and you can contemplate it intellectually, but ultimately meditation's all about the experience in your heart. We need to understand it intellectually. We need to understand exactly what meditation is, so we're not doing something that isn't meditation and then getting discouraged because we're doing something that isn't delivering that peace and happiness.
Yeah.
So we need to be clear. But as you say, and I think it's a really good point, often people may think, well, I don't have the why at the moment and I've thought about it and it doesn't really resonate for me at the moment. Well, combine your reflections and your contemplations with just a little bit of sitting. But it's really important when you do that to be super patient with yourself and super patient with the process of learning to meditate.
Yeah.
It's not like the first session you sit down, you're going to experience this deep bliss and peace and happiness. No, you'll probably just experience a truly neurotic mind that's spinning up lots of thoughts and distractions. And that's okay. It's part of the process. But if your why is compelling enough for you, then you're okay with that. This is why I'm learning to meditate, is to let go of what's burdening my mind, to find this deeper inner peace and happiness within my mind. So if we combine the contemplations with a little bit of experience, we'll notice that our why starts to get more compelling. We're more clear as to what we're doing. It's more compelling for us. And our direct experience over time is revealing the possibility of accomplishing that goal. Yeah, so
okay.
like that.
So am I hearing you say then that if I can't get a really clear, heartfelt why at the beginning, I just hold the question as I practice, and through that practice and experience, it will become clearer for me. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question, and listening to your first answer, it sounded wonderful about experiencing this inner peace and developing, and contemplating these virtues. But you kind of touched on this, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper. For somebody that's just starting out and, who has a very busy mind, or for that matter, somebody that's already meditating for many years and has a busy mind, what happens when that's not working? So it's like, I want to access that inner peace, but mind is so busy and I'm finding it difficult to concentrate. So really what I'm asking is if I can't access what you were talking about, what do I do?
Yeah, it's a really nice question. And I think a lot of people feel that definitely at the beginning. Like they sit down and, the first few sessions, they turn in and there's just this turbulence. And after a while, it just gets really discouraging.
Yeah.
You just think, I can't be bothered. This is getting me nowhere. Or maybe sometimes what people do is they come to a meditation center like our one in Dublin, and for a few sessions they're really enjoying it and they're actually experiencing a bit of peace and happiness, and actually whatever was burdening their mind before they came to the center, maybe they're now beginning to feel more at peace and happy, and they think, well, I'm good to go now, don't need to meditate. But the thing is, meditation is just more like a part of our way of life. It's integrated into our way of life and then becomes this process by which we find this deeper, more resilient, more robust inner peace and happiness and freedom within the mind. But it requires regular and ideally daily practice. So for the person who feels like my mind's too busy, I can't do this, again, I'd come back to that same point. Have that why deep in your heart, like really deeply reflect. It's the purpose of meditation is to pacify those distractions over time. The purpose of meditation is to continually increase that experience of a calm, clear, and peaceful mind, but it's not going to do it immediately. So you need to be super patient with yourself and super patient with the process. One of our challenges for all of us, especially nowadays, and we often are very goal-oriented. That's the way we think of life, and we grasp at the goal. So, listening to this and people are going, well, that's great. I can experience peace and happiness. And immediately the mind, if you're anything like me at the beginning, you go straight to the goal, this deep and stable peace and happiness. That's what I want. But then we get discouraged when we sit to meditation or meditate at the beginning, because that's not what we're getting.
Yeah.
What we're getting is a lot of distraction and disturbance. So you want to shift your focus at the beginning from the goal to the process. I'm just sitting to meditate. I'm developing my own inner confidence through my own experience over time that this will deliver that goal. But I keep the goal in the background of my mind, and I keep my focus on the process at the foreground of my mind. So I'm just sitting and I'm working with it gently. But even if you're just trying to meditate, gradually you'll create the tendencies or the potentialities within the mind, or the karma, we would say, to actually be able to meditate. So just your attempt at trying creates the potentialities or the tendency over time to be able to sit and meditate.
Right.
So just focus on the process, relax about the goal, and just know that my why is clear enough to me, it's compelling enough for me for now, and I'm just giving it a go. and then be super patient with yourself as you engage in the process of learning to meditate, and be super patient with the process. I mean, meditation is definitely going to deliver over time a deep sense of peace and happiness, but not at the beginning, because we have to work through all that stuff from the beginning.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next question. It kind of gets us into the area of anxiety and depression. So this question, this person asks, for someone who suffers with anxiety and depression, I find it hard to meditate. What's the best way to introduce this?
Yeah, it's a really good question, this. So many people are suffering with degrees of anxiety or depression or unhappiness or sadness these days, and often it's not really acknowledged. People are experiencing it, not really acknowledging it, and because we fail to acknowledge it, we somewhat repress it. And as a result of repressing it, it tends to bubble up too often in our minds and in our lives. So if somebody's suffering from chronic anxiety and chronic depression, you've got to really just, again, contemplate everything I was saying early on, just keep a really relaxed and patient approach with yourself and the process. But to address the issue more like kind of directly, where we're all experiencing this at some level, it's important to understand that anxiety, depression, fear, stress, they're all just simply symptoms of a life out of balance. And I think it's a really important point to kind of reflect on for everyone. We're experiencing at the moment so many problems in the world. So many people are experiencing so many problems with their life. So many people are struggling with their mental health as a result of our life being out of balance. And what I mean by that is we tend to focus on external developments. That's our goal. If I get that new job or that new promotion, I'm going to be happy. So I'm going to put all my energy and all my effort into securing that new job. And when I secure that new job, maybe I'm temporarily happy. My pay's gone up. My kind of position in the company or in the new company is like really inspiring to me. But after a while, that happiness fades and goes, and you're just left with the usual challenges and difficulties of a new job.
Yeah.
Or maybe people think, if I get this new home, then I'll be happy. And again, many people put a lot of energy and effort into their home, and you think, I've created this palace that I can live in for the rest of my life and I'll be happy. But we could see through the pandemic, very soon your palace starts to feel like a prison when you're told you can't go anywhere else. And so it's not that the home is going to give you the happiness you long for. It's not that you shouldn't have a good job or a nice home. It's just we're putting so much energy and effort out to find this happiness or to find this peace. Or maybe it's also our physical well-being. We put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into continually improving our physical well-being, our nutrition, our sleep, our exercise routines. And that's really important. It's truly important to have good physical health and well-being. And it's important to have these other aspects of our life, our job and our home. The problem is for most people is all of our energy is going out largely these days. It's ironic that we're struggling more than we ever have with our mental health and, our resilience for the challenges we meet in life. And yet we're not giving much attention to the one thing that will truly change that experience over time, our own mind. So we want to have a healthy approach to external developments or material developments, the external aspects of our life. But what we're leaving out and where we're lacking balance is we're not turning inwards for inner development. And by that, what I mean is continually cultivating and improving your inner well-being, which means your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Most people are ignoring that and thinking, actually, if I get all these things sorted out there, I'll feel well within myself, even though we're not. And we're actually feeling worse most of the time. So what we need is this healthy middle way between external developments. Of course, they're really important for a healthy, happy life. However, if we want a truly and consistently happy life, we need to take care of our inner well-being, learning to develop and maintain these good qualities of the heart, such as love and compassion and wisdom, so that we have more compassion with respect to ourselves, others, and we also have more wisdom as to what leads to a truly happy and meaningful life.
Right. Okay.
And we're guided by that compassion and wisdom to deeper peace and happiness in our hearts and therefore in our lives. Most people are not giving attention to that. Most people are not turning in to look at their mind, to work through the unhealthy, unhelpful emotions that we all struggle with, such as anger, attachment, anxiety, stress. We can turn in meditation and in these teachings and practices that Buddha taught to actually become free of whatever's burdening our mind, gradually over time. But also, when we turn in, we can also cultivate those good qualities of the heart that we all have the potential for, such as love, compassion, and wisdom, that guide our days, that guide our lives to deeper experience of inner peace and happiness, no matter what's happening in our life. So why are so many people experiencing anxiety, depression, stress, fear? It's because we're out of balance. We're just focused out on these external developments in our life, not finding the deep peace and happiness that we all long for. We may find moments, but we're not finding a deep, consistent, stable peace and happiness. And that will never come until we turn in and begin to work with our mind, because happiness is a feeling. It's a pleasant feeling that arises within the mind, or a joyful feeling in the mind that comes from inner peace. And Buddha discovered this over 2,600 years ago. The real source of the happiness we all long for, meaning that deep and lasting happiness that we all long for, the real source of that happiness is inner peace. And that inner peace comes from learning how to develop and maintain a consistently peaceful, positive mind. So learning how to live with compassion and love and wisdom enables your mind to remain buoyant, peaceful, balanced, and happy no matter what's going on in your life. If you're not doing that work on a daily basis, then of course we're very prone to anxiety, depression, stress, fear. We get to this place where we think, I can't be happy unless everything's going well out there. And that's what most of us feel at the moment, because most of our energy is going out. If I get that job, if I get that home, if I don't have to meet that difficult person at work today, I'm going to be happy. So most people feel I can't be happy unless. And of course, that's a breeding ground for anxiety and stress, because all of these things can change in any given moment. When we invest our happiness and our peace of mind in things going well out there, we're naturally increasing our anxiety and stress, because they rarely do. Things go wrong all the time. This is just part of our life. But when we understand through my meditation practice and through applying those insights and those experiences to my everyday life, living with more love, compassion, wisdom, acceptance, resilience, and so forth, through that inner development, that inner training, I'm now beginning to discover, actually, I can be happy as long as I'm able to develop and maintain that inner peace or peace of mind. So I can happily work with the challenges I meet without feeling overwhelmed by them. I can happily work with the difficulties in the world that I see at the moment without feeling completely overwhelmed by it. So we start to realize, actually, as I start to do this inner work in meditation daily, and I start to bring that training into my daily life and start to live from that peaceful mind and good heart more and more throughout my life, we start to realize, as I'm doing this inner work or inner development, now I'm getting a healthy balance between material development and inner development or spiritual development. That's what naturally begins to reduce our tendencies for anxiety and stress and so forth. So I guess for those people who are struggling with meditation and because of the anxiety and depression, I'd first say reflect on that. It's not you. There's nothing inherently wrong with you. It's not you. It's just simply a result of, or a symptom of, life out of balance. Our world is experiencing this lack of balance. It's why there's so much anger on social media, so much hatred in the world, so much conflict in the world. Like my teacher, Geshe Kelsang, Venerable Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche, said, if everyone just cherished each other, like if we genuinely had a warm heart and a loving concern for others, if we genuinely cherish others, we'll solve many of the major problems in the world in a few years. Just think about that deeply. And even if it's not in the world, what about your corner of the world? If we genuinely cherished each other, we wouldn't have so much anxiety and stress in our relationships. If we loved the other person, thought they're important, their happiness matters, they're not there to make me happy all the time. Actually, my love for them is giving me a deeper peace of mind and happiness more of the time. If we knew that, if we really start to live from that peaceful mind and warm heart of love more and more, we notice that our mind is far more at peace, more comfortable, free of worry and discomfort. So I guess it's that understanding first. It's not you, it's not your fault, it's just the symptom of life out of balance. So I think it's really important nowadays, in this conversation that's ongoing in the media about mental health and people struggling with their mental health, that we need to have a conversation. Okay, let's have the conversation about the challenges we face with our mental health, but let's look at this time-honoured lineage of training that anyone can practice to take incredibly good care of your mental emotional, and spiritual well-being on a daily basis. And then let's find a starting point for everyone to just start a little bit and take one step at a time. One simple step. Don't focus too much on the end goal, being completely free from anxiety, depression, and so forth. No, just take the first step. Sit down and do a little bit of meditation. And so for those people who are struggling with that, just understand that when you sit down first and you turn in to meditate, your meditation isn't making your mind more busy, distracted, agitated, anxious. Your meditation practice is just like a window. It's revealing what's going on in your mind throughout the day. It's why we don't want to sit with ourselves. We don't want to sit with our mind most of the time, because our mind is always agitated and distracted. So instead of getting upset about that, just understand, actually, that's why I'm doing this. I want to become free of that suffering. And sometimes it's like that. We only really will put enough energy and effort into something when we've suffered enough. And you've got to get to that point in your life where you think, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of suffering like this. And as I say, within this training, within this tradition, within this lineage, especially within this Kadampa Buddhist lineage, it's so accessible for everyone. And so start like that. I'm just living out of balance. I need to restore some balance. Okay. So then when I start meditation and I sit down, don't worry too much about the end goal. Again, come back to the process of sitting and then try to bring this wisdom into your day and into your life. And as we'll explore in this podcast more over time, there are many ways to look at life that can gradually, gently reduce the anxiety and so forth over time. What you discover is anxiety, depression, stress, and so forth. They're feelings arising from within the mind. So they're coming from the mind, not what's happening in your life. And they're coming from how you're viewing yourself, others, and life. And you can begin to change that view through training, developing this wisdom and compassion in your heart. You can begin to change that view. And as a result of that, you start to reduce the anxiety over time. Really, the anxiety and fear and depression is just coming from our mind being out of balance, out of control. Meditation brings this natural mental equilibrium, mental balance and control, so that you can start to look at life with greater clarity, greater wisdom, and you can begin to reduce those tendencies more and more and become free of them more and more. So there's nothing fixed. There's nothing inherently anxious about you or inherently stressy about you. None of that. What we discover in meditation actually is when we sit to meditate and we step out of that feelings of anxiety or fear or depression, we step into that peaceful potential within our heart. And what happens gradually over time is you start to begin to relate to yourself differently. If you can settle the mind a little bit, let go of some anxiety or fear or stress, and you can settle the mind just a little bit for a little while. For somebody who suffers a lot of anxiety and stress or depression, that's like liberation for them, because they're so in it all the time. It's so burdening for them all of the time. And so when you sit to meditate and you let go of those feelings and you connect to that peaceful potential within your heart, it's unbelievably liberating for that person. And then gradually start to change. Instead of thinking of myself as this inherently anxious person who can't change, you have a little bit of a space in your day, maybe for a minute or two at the beginning, where you're just free a little bit from that anxiety. You've got some peace. You've got some sense of your potential to change. And as you continue to improve your meditation, you're patient with yourself in the process. Maybe you remain there for 5 minutes one day, relatively free of anxiety or depression or stress. What happens is you naturally begin to change how you relate to yourself. Instead of I'm this inherently anxious person who can't change, I'm this person now who's beginning to discover the potential within me for change. But it's really important not to put too much pressure on yourself at the beginning. Yes, when you turn in, your mind is definitely going to be overwhelmed, distracted, agitated, especially if you've struggled with that for a long time. But be sure that your own experience, not my words, will reveal over time the potential you have to move beyond that. That's definite. And so just be relaxed with the process, engage with the process, and gently engage in each day without any huge expectations. Just a lot of patience with yourself in the process and let go of any expectations. And so that then gradually you'll start to get this feeling of your potential to change. And then within all the meditation practices Buddha taught, they're like gathering all these internal conditions that gradually begin to undermine the tendencies for anxiety, anger, and so forth. They start to begin to undermine all of that as you gain deeper experience of the practices, so that the anxiety becomes less and less and less intense, and gradually become more and more free of it, gradually over time. And again, patient with yourself at the beginning.
Brilliant, yeah. So You've talked about patience there, because I notice in a number of the questions, it's either said directly or indirectly. There seems to be a lot of frustration. Like even in that question that I asked about the person that's suffering from anxiety and depression, and they find it hard to meditate. So there's a kind of a frustration there. And I was wondering, as you were talking, can we develop anxiety internally? So you talked about external factors. So, do you find that some meditators get anxious about their meditation practice because it's not going the way that they would wish it to go? And obviously, what you said about being patient with yourself and then trusting the process. And also, as I'm listening to you, like I'm hearing, I'm hearing you talk about like what I felt was like about building up a confidence, right, in my practice. So I was just wondering, what else can I do, along with be patient with myself, trust the process. What else can I do to build up that confidence that's going to get me into a kind of a momentum for my practice?
Yeah, good question. Really nice question, actually. Can we, for the first bit, can we get anxious about,
Yeah,
things that are happening within our mind, not just things that are happening
yeah,
externally? Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to understand that anxiety is just simply a response to, in some way, feeling I can't be happy unless, maybe in this particular context, anxiety can come from different angles. But in this context, I can't be happy unless everything goes well today. Everything goes well in my life today, then I can be happy. And of course, everything's constantly changing and it's constantly inducing this worry and anxiety. I can't deal with this. But also, we can think, I can't be happy unless my meditation goes well today.
yeah, yeah,
And it's not.
yeah,
And now, actually, when I turn in to meditate, it's making me more anxious
exactly.
because it's not going well. So
Yeah,
that's where you need that wisdom and you need that like deep compassion for yourself. Like we all struggle from these tendencies, all of us. Some people struggle a lot more because they, been burdened by them for a long time and somewhat mistakenly identify with them as if they reflect who they are, as opposed to the truth. It's just what they've not attended to yet and can become free of. So somebody who's sitting to meditate can be worried about what's going on in the world out there. They turn in to meditate to become free of that worry and anxiety. And then they notice they're still thinking about the thing out there and then getting worried and anxious about the fact they can't meditate.
mm,
So again, the key is not to try and attack the worry and anxiety head on, but just to engage with the process of meditation. So for example, like, I don't know if this analogy works, but let's say, an army is coming to attack their enemy, and the enemy's in this fort surrounded by this moat. And the army walks up to the front of the fort or the castle and stands in front of the front door of the castle, ready to attack the enemy. Well, all the enemy has to do to make sure that they don't attack the castle is lift the bridge, and so they can't come across. What's a more clever strategy to do is just simply surround the whole fort or the castle, and then the enemy doesn't know where you're coming from. So as you start to surround the whole fort, you can then enter all the doors of the castle because they
mm,
don't know you're coming. So it's a
mm,
bit like that. We turn in and we think, I need to get rid of this anxiety. I need to get rid of this worry. And then there's this grasping in the
mm,
mind that makes it more intense, actually makes it more painful. And of
mm,
course, as a result of that, we then actually feel quite burdened by that. We start to identify with, I'm just this inherently anxious person who can't really change. And it's just profoundly discouraging every time I turn in that actually I'm increasing my anxiety. Now I'm worrying about the fact I can't meditate, and that makes me feel worse about myself. And it's important to understand for everybody on the podcast, there's no such truth in that. All you're experiencing is intense feelings that the mind is mistakenly identifying with as if it reflects who you are. It doesn't reflect who you are. It just reflects what you're struggling with on that particular day. Or for some people, it's what they're struggling with most days. But those feelings come and go. If it's inherently who you are, they can't come and go. They always have to be there. So what you discover is when you learn to meditate, actually, I can let go of those feelings temporarily. That's what I was saying earlier on. It creates this space where you think, in meditation, as I improve it over time, I'm now free of that anxiety. And so you develop this confidence that that doesn't reflect who I am, it just reflects what I've been struggling with up to now. And in my meditation practice, I experience these windows of peace, these windows of joy, these windows of freedom. And in that experience, I begin to discover my potential to change. The only way we're really going to become free of this anxious way that we relate to ourselves, or this identifying with our anxiety is through our own direct experience. Now we need to apply the deeper, more profound teachings that Buddha taught on the nature of self or the nature of the mind to understand how to completely become free of anxiety and identifying with it.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, at least, give yourself windows of space where you actually feel that peace, you feel that freedom. And then you start to get this new sense of I, this new sense of self-identification. Oh, I can potentially become free of this. But yeah, the anxiety can come from basically where we're at in the meditation. So again, remind yourself, the anxiety doesn't reflect who you are. It's just reflecting what you're getting caught up in the moment.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on the goal of pushing away the anxiety or getting it out of the way so you can get on with your meditation, focus on the process.
Right.
If you just focus on the breath, it's like coming at the enemy from all sides. You're just focusing on the breath, for example, in this simple meditation. If you're meditating on the emptiness of self, for example, these more profound meditations, just focus on the meditation. Don't worry about getting rid of yourself. That sense of ordinary I and ordinary self will dissolve through the meditation. But for those who are beginning and those who are starting with that anxiety and that depression, it's if you're focusing on the breath or you're doing other meditations to help you get deeper experience of letting go of that, then just notice that anyway, if I focus on the process, the feelings of anxiety or worry start to dissolve anyway. And so I don't need to attack it head on. I just need to engage with the process. And then this relaxed experience starts to come more and more.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Okay, we move on to the next question. Yeah. So this is kind of around anger and made a bit of resentment. So this person says, when I realize that I've been angry, unkind, or had a fraught relationship to a deceased person in the past because of attachment and expectations I had to that person, and of course, now I would like to heal that, but cannot turn back the clock. Is there a teaching you could guide me to finding peace with that regret, since the person is not here now to reconcile?
Yeah, that's a really, really deep question. It's a lovely question that somebody brings that up and can say, with that honesty that we all have had these experiences. It may not be even somebody past in your life. It's just somebody you've not seen since, and you're carrying that kind of feelings of guilt maybe, or feelings of shame that you acted in a certain way and you've never been able to resolve it with them. But especially when somebody passes, it feels like there's a finality to that. There's nothing I can now do, and I just carry these feelings of guilt or maybe even resentment for the person or anger. So Buddha gave lots of amazing advice on this, and it's like explained extensively within Buddhist teachings and within the Kadampa Buddhist tradition. Especially a book called How to Solve Our Human Problems is an amazing text for really exploring this by Geshe Kelsang. And I think anybody who wants to explore more depth, they could explore that book. But I think in the context of what this person's talking about, I think what's really important at the beginning is to really be at peace with the person who's passed and what happened. You really have to learn to be at peace with yourself. So it's really important that we understand when somebody's passed and we're carrying these feelings of guilt or shame for how we acted and how we both interacted, and some anger or resentment towards them and how they acted, the only way you can ever really be at peace with them now is being at peace with yourself and forgiving yourself for what's happened, not berating yourself for what's happened. So within the Buddhist context and the way we understand that is very simple. Whenever let's say you were getting angry with this person, or you're constantly having arguments with this person, when you're in that space and you're having this constant ongoing conflict, what's really happening is it's not your fault. It's just tendencies within your mind that are triggered by certain situations that give rise to maybe anger or aggression and so forth. A lot of that's coming from this tendency that the person's talking about, attachment. So we have this strong attachment within our mind. We basically have this tendency, we call them delusions within Buddhism. It basically means it's a distorted way that you relate to yourself, others, and the world around you that continually undermines your peace of mind or your happiness. We all have the tendencies within our mind. We're all burdened by those tendencies. But it's important to understand through this kind of training, you can begin to gradually let them go and become free of them over time. There's nothing fixed in this.
It's great news.
Yeah. So for all of us. So when we have attachment in our mind, basically we exaggerate what's in front of us. Let's say when they first met this person, When you have attachment in your mind and that person's like, in some way you feel happy to be around them, your mind tends to exaggerate the qualities you see in the person until you get attached to this idea, this person has the power to make me happy.
Right.
And we get attached to this unrealistic idea and unrealistic expectations. They're going to make me happy all the time. That's why we say to people, I love you. You make me happy all the time. But then what happens as a result of that unrealistic expectation, when they're not doing what we want them to do, meaning when they're not making us happy all the time, we get increasingly upset with them and see faults in them. And as a result of that, we get angry with them. So this attachment is really, really a deep burden within all of us that we need to gradually begin to see and become free of over time, which we can. But it creates all of these unrealistic expectations. We think that person should be making me happy all the time, when it's self-evident that that person struggles themselves to be happy most of the time. Yeah. So clearly it's an exaggerating mind, it's a mistaken mind. When you start to see the mistake, you can let go and let everybody off the hook of these unrealistic expectations, and then be more at peace with when they're not exactly playing up to the way you want them to and they're being difficult and so forth. You can be more at peace with the fact that everyone has difficult minds and everyone has difficult days, and that's okay, I accept that. However, in this particular situation, when those attachments and unrealistic expectations keep functioning in the mind for a long time, then we start to have conflict because the person isn't doing what we want them to do, acting the way we want them to act, and then comes this anger. Instead of now thinking they're a true source of happiness, we start to exaggerate their faults and their bad qualities. We can't see any of the good qualities when we're angry. And when anger comes, it's another mistake in mind. You think, now they're my enemy, when previously they were my best friend or my soulmate. And so what anger does is exaggerates the faults you see on somebody until you lock in on the idea this person is inherently faulty. And then we have all these conflicts, like the person saying, from that attachment comes the anger, from the anger comes the arguments, from the arguments comes the resentment, where we hold that anger in our heart, we don't forget it. So here's the important point for this person. It's not your fault. It's not your fault at all that you're in that space. It's the fault of the delusions or these tendencies within your mind. You are not your delusions. You are not your anger. You are not your attachment. You're burdened by those. We all are. But you can become free of those. So instead of thinking, I'm this angry person or I'm this needy person, just understand, I have these delusions within my mind. They don't reflect who I am, but I can become free of them over time. The only way I can become free of them over time is to accept and be at peace with myself when I lose it. As soon as I can accept and be at peace with myself when I lose it with another person, I open the door now to begin to work on those tendencies on a daily basis, in my meditation practice, in my daily life, to reduce their power and become increasingly free of them. So this person, when they're experiencing maybe some feelings of guilt for how they acted, or shame for who they are, I'm this angry person, this needy person, this jealous person, when you're feeling all that, what you're doing at that time is mistakenly identifying with those thoughts and feelings as if they reflect who you are rather than what you're struggling with. And so what you want to do over time is just develop some just wisdom in your heart that understand this doesn't reflect who I am and I can become free of them. And so in that way you can forgive yourself. So when we're feeling guilt for what we've done or shame for who we are, we're relating to those thoughts and feelings that were arising at that time as if they reflect who we are inherently, and they just reflect where you were temporarily at that time. What we discover in Buddhism, and we'll explore this more in other episodes, is that there's an innate peace and goodness within everyone's hearts. There's a potential for deep love, compassion, wisdom, peace of mind in everyone's hearts. Buddha called this our Buddha nature, our Buddha seed. That actually you can come to prove to yourself over time is the truth of who you are. And then temporarily we get caught up in these negative habits of mind or these destructive habits of mind, and then we respond from there and we get caught up in that and then mistakenly identify with them. So instead of feeling guilt or shame, just simply remind yourself. In the book New 8 Steps to Happiness, Geshe Kelsang talks about this, and I think it's one of my favorite paragraphs, one of my favorite sections.
You say that about all of them.
Yeah, well, they all are, but at this particular one I just think is so healing for people at this time. He says, whilst acknowledging we have delusions, because we have them, we have these tendencies, we shouldn't allow ourselves to identify with them, thinking I'm an angry person, or I'm a selfish person, or I'm a worthless person. He said instead, we should identify with our pure potential and have the wisdom and courage to overcome our delusions. And that's what's important for that person is like, yeah, you have delusions. We all have them. Yeah, we lose it with people. Of course, we all do. They don't reflect who you are. They reflect what you're struggling with. And gradually, with a bit of wisdom and a bit of courage to face them, become free of them, you can do. So on that basis, when you're carrying anger or resentment to that person when they're alive and you're thinking, well, now I can't really be at peace with that person anymore. Of course you can. They don't reflect who you are. It actually should encourage you, energize you. I'm going to become the person I wasn't able to be back then. I'm actually going to learn how to let go of these delusions. I'm going to learn how to relate to that pure potential within my heart, that peaceful mind and good heart. I'm going to live for more peace, more love, more compassion, more wisdom in my everyday life. And I'm going to become the person I struggled to be back then. And I know over time through this kind of training, I have the potential to become that person. So in a sense, you become more at peace with yourself. I'm using that situation to become free of those unhealthy habits of mind. I'm using that situation to energize me to become the person I've always wanted to be. And then you start to be able to let go of the anger and resentment towards them as well. Because you understand, just like I was struggling with my mind, so were they. And gradually over time, it depends on what the situation was. You can develop more compassion for the person, more acceptance that everyone's struggling with their mind. There's no reason to judge them. It's actually just a basis to have increasing compassion for them. So then what happens is you may not ever see that person again, but you heal the relationship in your heart. Like my relationship with you doesn't depend upon you. It depends upon how I see you, how I feel about you.
Right.
And if I can develop this love in my heart and compassion for that person now over time, I have a good relationship with them going forward, free of the guilt, free of the shame. And of course, there are deeper meditations as well to completely become free of all of that when we start to understand the nature of self, the nature of the mind and so forth. But for today, I think that's enough for that person to maybe start at least to reflect on that. And then, as I say, just be super patient with that process of change over time.
Sounds brilliant. Like one of the things that strikes me about everything that you said is, this wisdom. Like there's so much wisdom coming from these teachings. So how do I develop that wisdom? Like where do you get it? Where does it come from?
Well, it's everything, I think, and it's a nice summation of everything we're looking at today. I think it really is. This wisdom has been shared over 2,600 years. People have been integrating these reflections, these contemplations, these meditations. They've been taking them very deep into their heart. And so we all have the potential for deep love, deep compassion, deep wisdom. What we need to do is train in the methods that help you continually and daily develop that deeper wisdom in your heart so you start to live from it. And as we explore in future episodes, we'll look at that more deeply. But the one point I'd say to your question, and it's a beautiful question, is like we do have the potential for it. And all of the methods have been around for a very long time to help us all cultivate this deeper wisdom in our heart that actually guides our life. Not like some thought in your head. I don't mean some intellectual, conceptual thought alone, although that's where it starts. I mean a deep experience of wisdom in your heart that naturally guides your day and your life. So I would say that everyone can come to discover through what we're exploring in these podcasts. That's possible for us all.
Kadam Adam, thank you very much. I enjoyed it so much. This brings us to the end of today's episode of Calm, Clear Mind podcast. And as I said, thank you, Adam, for wonderful wisdom. And I'm sure that's really helpful to those people that ask those questions, but lots of others, including myself. So we really hope that you got something from our conversations today. To drop in on future episodes, just hit the subscribe and follow button. And until next time, we hope you have a calm, clear mind. Thank you.